Peace, family. Welcome to Black Star TV 2.0. It's your boy Black Star, and today we want to get into another episode and talk about the Black Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus, the Asian Caucus, and the Native Caucus, and how Black folks are the only ones who advocate for other groups, while these other groups just advocate for themselves. So we have to actually stop doing that, and I wanted to show y'all based off. Their websites, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Asian Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and show y'all exactly how they are, who's advocating for who, and who's not advocating for who, right? So this is why my belief is this is why we have to stop using the whole black and brown and stop doing the whole we all shall overcome stuff, because no, when it comes down to getting specific tangibles for them, they they fight for their people specifically. When it comes to us, we fighting for everybody, and that has to stop, because that is a tactic used by the dominant white society, especially the Democrats, to water down the black movement and black progress. So I'm gonna show y'all the God, none other than Dr. Boyce, not Dr. Boyce, excuse me, Dr. Claude Anderson, and his take from a couple years ago on the whole affirmative action, what he made it for, and how they use these other groups to undermine black people. So let me share my screen and get to it.
Daniel Monahan wrote a memo to the president, says the way you shut down the black power movement in this country, to shut down the black civil rights movement, is to take the focus off of black folk and put it on minority women, children, and immigrants. And then they give a policy called benign neglect. Benign means pretend that something's not really that bad, but you neglect it. And that's the policy you're under right now. You're under a public policy of benign neglect, which means that things are not that bad for black folks, so let's just neglect it. Now, after 50 years after the civil rights movement, it has morphed into what we call now is hateful indifference towards black folk. You've gotten absolutely nothing. So in the 1960s, the black civil rights leaders in this country says, well, if that's the reality, blacks never get anything, let's just give in to the reality of racism. And they joined in with all these various groups. So black leadership in the 1960s and 1970 joined in with the women's groups, the gays groups, the immigrant groups. They signed documents that they would never do anything without including these other groups. That's why you can't find anybody taking up a black cause in this country. You can't get out of the ditch because nobody's going to throw a rope down to pull you out specifically. Nobody. That's not from the White House to the outhouse. Nobody's going to do anything for you. Because they're going to try to pretend that you're part of a group. And I had to do this on the right, the first affirmative action plan in the United States in 1970. I did not write affirmative action for minorities. I didn't write it for poor people, for disadvantaged, for women, for gays, and for midgets, for humpbacks and lesbians. I wrote it for black folk. Affirmative action means corrective action, correcting something that the government did intentionally to a very specific group of people. Nobody's ever abused and enslaved women, gays, midgets, humpbacks, and one-legged people. Never did that. But they're now all included in the affirmative action program. And you all understand, you start talking about affirmative action, and they started in the 1960s, 1970s. The first affirmative action plan was the United States Constitution. This is what I'm telling you now. You keep this in your mind and write it down. The first affirmative action plan was the Constitution.
Okay. So I just wanted to show y'all that so he could break down, so y'all can listen to him break down how other groups are used to undermine this, how they use benign neglect policies to undermine black people. So again, this is the Congressional Black Caucus, and this is their website. So let's get into it. So it says, since its establishment in 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus, CBC, has been committed to using the full constitutional power, statutory authority, and financial resources of the federal government to ensure that African Americans and other marginalized communities in the United States have an opportunity to achieve the American dream. See, because this is what they do. The Congressional Black Caucus is a group of coons, a group of Sambos who are used to undermine the black community by advocating for other people as well as African Americans so that we don't get anything and that we our stuff is watered down and that they get stuff and that we don't. So let me get back into it. So that's us. So now let's get into the Hispanic Caucus, right? The Congressional Hispanic Caucus and what they are about. So um, it says the CHC addresses national and international issues and crafts policies that impact the Hispanic community. The CHC addresses national and international issues and crafts policies that impacts the Hispanic community. The function, oh no, watch this. Um, the caucus is dedicated to voicing and advancing through the legislative process issues affecting Hispanics in the United States, Puerto Rico, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. See, because this is what they're about. They are strictly about um, correcting self. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that we find wrong and disrespectful is that we advocate for you guys, but you guys do not advocate for us. That's why all of this advocating for people using the whole black and brown term, all of that shit has to go. Has to go. Because we can't be advocating for you and get you benefits based off things that happen to us. But when something happens to you, you're specifically going for yourself. You're going for things for yourself. So now we got the Pacific Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, right? And so the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, the excuse me, the CAPAC is comprised of members of the Congress of Asian and Pacific Islander descent and members who have a strong dedication to promoting the well-being of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander community. Now let's get down here for the purpose. To ensure that the legislation passed by the United States Congress to the greatest extent possible provides the full participation of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and reflects the concerns and needs of Asian American and Pacific Islander community. To educate other members of Congress about the history, contributions, and concerns of Asian American and Pacific Islanders. Again, these people are specifically trying to get done legislation specifically for themselves. Specifically for themselves, right? So now we have to be on the same type of time. We're not going to be advocating for marginalized communities, disenfranchised communities, underprivileged communities. We're not doing none of that. So all this is going to be strictly for anything we, especially when it comes to reparations, we definitely only specifically coming to us. But now let's go to the Congressional Native American Caucus. Now I couldn't find their website for some reason, but I did bump into this, which kind of goes into the same topic of um, reparations and reparations for Black Americans. This is for foundational Black Americans, and this is exactly why we need it because they give money um, to every other race except for us. And when it comes to us, it's like, oh, we can't give y'all tangibles. We're gonna, it's gonna be like that's why I say it's gonna be a whole coalition of other people, whereas black and brown, and then you know, what's the other word I'm looking for? Not marginalized, but minority. Minority. Then you have white women are minority, gay white men are minority. These people could be rich as hell and be considered a minority, and then get minority funds for people who are disenfranchised, even though they're not disenfranchised. So um, again, they gave out all these coronavirus relief, which is from through the CARES Act. They gave it to the Congressional Native American Caucus, and other Native Americans, but also, they had gave out money to everybody. They gave out a $1,200 check and a $600 check, which costed the American government trillions of dollars. Now, on top of that, you gave them this, which was for healthcare. You gave them 1.032 billion for the Indian Health service account. Includes up to 65 million for electronic health record and stabilization and support. Includes up to 125 million for IHS facilities. At least 450 million shall be distributed to the direct service tribes and self-governance tribes. 125 million be transferred to and merged with the Indian Health Service, Indian Health Facilities and account. Public health, 1.5 billion for the CDC grants and cooperative agreements, of which the Indian tribes, tribal organizations, and urban Indian health organizations are eligible to apply, and a minimum of 125 million for CDC set aside funding directly to Indian tribes, tribal organizations, and urban Indian health organizations. All right. So now a minimum of $15 million set aside funding for tribes and tribal organizations under the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, um, funding for mental health and behavioral health services to respond to COVID-19, 15 million for the Public Health Service and Social Service Emergency Fund, 15 million to telehealth and royal health activity set aside funds for um, tribes and tribal organizations. See what I'm saying? They get nothing but millions of dollars. Four, 453 million for Indian Affairs operations and Indian programs until September 30th, 2021. 300 million under the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act. 200 million is for Native American Housing Block Grants Formula. 100 million for Indian Community Development Block Grants. 5 million for Office of Public and Indian Housing. 4.5 million for tribal domestic violence shelters through the Family Violence and Prevention Service Act. 10% tribal set aside from the 45 million. 900 million for low income energy assistance, which includes tribal whatever that is. That's what I'm saying. Nothing but millions of dollars, economic relief. Like, dog, they just getting, look, $450 billion for loans, grants, investments, and support of the Federal Reserve's lending facilities to eligible businesses. Like, yo, they get stupid bread. Stupid bread. See what I'm saying? While we don't get anything. We still sitting here fighting for reparations. This is what I'm saying. This is why we cannot afford to um, join with other groups. This is why we cannot afford to um, talk this black and brown, marginalized groups, disenfranchised groups, minorities, LGBT. We have to separate ourselves from all of this stuff, and we can't allow them to put us in. They actually even fractionalize us into other um, groups with even within Black society. So now you have you'll have somebody saying, "Oh, we need to help the Black community," but then Black trans lives matter, Black uh, uh, Black women lives matter, like yo, they just start straight breaking us down into sections, and it's just like, hold up, they Black people. The reason that they're marginalized because they Black, not because they know Black trans, not because they know Black um, LGBT, not because they're no Black woman, not because you get what I'm saying. You literally, and I noticed this for real, you always try to get every other little fraction but Black men, right? You literally try to do that without mentioning Black men at all. So, excuse me. So again, that's what the issue is, and we have to stop allowing these people to do that, so that we can further ourselves as a group and not be watered down, and not let other people get um, funds from things that we're affected by. Like if somebody get killed by the cops and they start up a fund for minorities, blacks, like, first of all, the cop killed a black person in a almost predominantly black neighborhood, and now all of a sudden the funds are going to Hispanics, Asians, it's going to everybody, Native Americans, it's like going to everybody, LGBTQ, everybody but the people that's really being affected by the situation in the cause. You know what I'm saying? So we have to look out for things like that. We can't, again, advocate anymore for any other groups because, again, they don't advocate for us. As you've seen on their website, they are not advocating for us. They do not talk to black and brown. They do not talk to marginalized group. They don't talk any of that talk. They talk specifically for their people, which, again, there's nothing wrong for you fighting specifically for your people, but we do have an issue when we include you, but you don't want to include us, and those days is over. All right, family, you have a good day. I'm about to get up out of here and handle some business. So I will see y'all next time on the next episode. I'm probably going to be talking about uh, pro-blackness and can a pro-black person date a white woman? Date outside of a black woman. That's what it should really be, just in general. But all right, I'm gonna let y'all go. Peace out. Y'all be blessed and stay safe, man.